interrupt this program to bring you Courage, the Cowardly Dog Month.
Whole month of Courage, the Cowardly Dog. First appearing in 1996, it was picked up by Cartoon Network, who work in the middle of Burbank, and directed by cartoonist John Dilworth. Though many years have passed since the original air date, it's now time for Zack to celebrate this great show.
Well, old sport, what do you think? Neat. Hey guys, Zack here, and welcome back to Courage Month. So, this is actually the first episode that we're actually reviewing of Courage the Cowardly Dog. If you guys didn't see my previous episode on this, we actually reviewed the pilot for Courage the Cowardly Dog, which is what ultimately got it turned into a full-length series. So now we're actually in the series proper. We're actually going to start reviewing the first episode of this, and this is kind of a recurring format in that they're all 11-minute shorts with some exceptions. There's a full half-hour one, but for the most part, they're all going to be 11 minutes. So, what I'm going to be doing for the most part going forward is I'm going to be splitting these up into two different reviews. So we're going to start by reviewing the first half of the episode, then we're going to review the second half of the episode, and if it's a full-length half-hour episode, we'll just review it as normal. So, in any case, without further ado, let's cue the animation. Okay, so this episode actually introduces us to the series' main antagonist, Katz. And he is, and I do say main antagonist because he is Courage's nemesis and while he's not in every episode, but he is one of the few characters to show up every season, at least once. So he is a recurring villain throughout the series and is the one that Courage faces off against the most out of all of them. It kind of sets him up as the main antagonist. It kind of sets him up as this ruthless killer who stops at nothing to just kind of cause torment to everybody around him. And he's a very cruel and sadistic kind of character. But in any case, it starts off with Courage, Muriel, and Eustace actually arriving at the titular Katz Motel. And they actually get stuck, and they actually are coming back from a vacation, which Eustace kind of mentions is kind of a crummy way to end a vacation because it's currently raining and they need a place to stay because they're not going to be able to get all the way home because of how late it is. And Courage is a little bit nervous because it's a very run-down hotel in the middle of nowhere. So, well, it's a motel in the middle of some abandoned place, but it gets to that in a minute. It gets to that at a later date, but this episode. But in any case, Courage proceeds to kind of panic because it's thundering, and he doesn't like thunder. And he actually clings to Eustace for protection, which has never worked out for him. At least not so far. We saw how that happened and how that worked out in the pilot for him. But in any case, they go in to actually check into the Katz Motel, and we're actually properly introduced to Katz, who introduces himself as the owner of the Katz Motel, and as a formality asks them to actually sign into the guest book and actually make sure that they actually fill out all the necessary paperwork. But then notice that they have Courage with them, and then points to a sign pointing out that there are no dogs allowed. So Courage is forced to kind of wait outside, and Eustace takes him outside, ties him up to a post, and then also scares him for good measure just to torment him, with Muriel bonking him over the head with her purse, and Eustace complaining about what he did. And Muriel reassures Courage, saying that it's only going to be for the one night, and that they'll be out of there first thing tomorrow morning. So it's not really going to be this long thing like he's thinking it will be. But in any case, they proceed to get ready to go to their motel room and get ready to check in. And get ready to turn in for the night. Muriel actually draws a bath and gets ready to clean herself off before she goes to bed. While Eustace just kind of completely curls up. He was just happy to be in a nice warm bed for the time being, and just kind of curls up on the bed and goes to sleep almost immediately. However, neither of them are very aware of the fact that Katz actually has a sinister plan for them, which is that he's actually going to use them as food for his army of spiders that he apparently has. So he keeps an army of spiders in his private room in the back of the Katz Motel behind the main desk. And he tells them, and he just kind of tells his spiders that their dinner has arrived, but also tells them to clean up their mess because it's a mess. And yeah, you can actually in the room you can actually see a bunch of discarded skeletons from all the other times Katz has done this, which is kind of more, which again is very on brand of the series, but it's just kind of morbid that there's been so many people who have come into the Katz Motel, and it's implied that, and later stated by Katz himself, that none of them have checked out. So yeah, he's clearly been running this operation for a while in order to feed his spiders, which is kind of cruel and sadistic. Again, he's a very cruel, sadistic character. But in case he then proceeds to spy on Muriel and Eustace through the painting and the piping in the water of the bath that she's drawn. And he actually spies on them to make sure they haven't actually moved from their hotel at all, from their motel room at all, so that he can actually unleash his spiders on them. At which point he actually then proceeds to go out to where Courage is actually tied up and lets a spider out of its box, which then proceeds to charge at Courage. And Courage panics, understandably so, because it's a very big spider and he realizes he's going to get eaten. So he tries to break the leash. He tries pulling on it, that doesn't work. He pulls out a blowtorch, that doesn't work. He pulls out a chainsaw, that doesn't work. He pulls out some concentrated acid, that doesn't work. Eventually he bites it, that works and then he cheers and goes to go find Muriel and Eustace before they get eaten by spiders, since he knows what Katz is up to now. But it's at this point where a spider has actually slipped into Muriel's bath and is trying to eat her. And Muriel actually wrestles with the spider a little bit and starts screaming. And Courage actually notices that, actually hears her from the hotel room, but notices that the door to the room is locked, can't get in. So he pulls up a cannon and then climbs inside and shoots himself through the window to actually get in. At which point Muriel notices Courage is there, tells him to go get help. Since obviously she's dealing with a very dangerous man-eating spider, and obviously Courage needs to get help immediately. So Courage goes for Eustace because he's there. But it quickly becomes apparent that Eustace is completely 100% out. He ain't waking up anytime soon. And that kind of becomes a joke throughout the episode that he's apparently impossible to wake up. So in any case, Courage actually uses his best efforts to actually wake Eustace up. He initially tries to shake him awake before pulling out a giant horn and blowing it in Eustace's face, and also trying to pop it back to make a big loud noise. That doesn't work either. So Eustace Eustace is just still fast asleep. So Courage goes to Muriel to see if he can actually help her, but she merely asks Courage if he found any help, which he didn't. So he goes back to Eustace to try and wake him up again. Only by this point, the bed it has actually flipped over and Eustace has actually tumbled into the basement. So Courage realizing that Eustace is now gone, realizes he actually needs to find someone else to go and help him. So he goes looking for Katz, who is obviously the manager. Obviously he might be able to help, or at least he's trying to find somebody who can help. He does eventually wind up in the check-in office, but notices that nobody seems to be around and wonders where everybody is. And sure enough, he pokes his head into the back room and discovers Eustace tied up in a spider web, in the spider's web. He's tied up in a cocoon. And Courage panics, realizing that if he doesn't do something, Eustace is going to get eaten. And he eventually pries up one of the floorboards and beats the spider with it, which kills it. And then he plucks Eustace out of the web by climbing on the plank that he literally just ripped up from the floor, and tries to carry Eustace out of the back room. But Katz actually corners him and tells him if Courage is actually leaving so soon, and then locks the door. And Courage realizes that he's in trouble if Katz catches him, so he throws the unconscious Eustace at Katz and pins him to the floor. And then proceeds to run deeper into the building. And Katz merely states that he wishes Courage hadn't done that. At which point Courage proceeds to race deeper into the building, and eventually winds up in a very dark room and locks the door behind him. And he can't see anything, so he turns on the light, and notices that apparently Katz has a big, massive collection of spiders in his basement. So And obviously Courage sees all the taxidermed and preserved spiders in the basement, and all one after another, and they're all completely freaky looking. And Courage panics and runs out of the room, and in the process knocks the door down, which Katz has where Katz has since figured out where Courage is, and the door lands on top of him. And Courage just kind of runs him over, and Katz once again reiterates his point that he wished Courage hadn't done that. So, but eventually Courage winds up being cornered in a dark alley in the back of the basement. At which point Katz finally corners him and tells Courage that he's going to die, but he can't understand why they can't have a little bit of sport before Courage dies. So they then proceed to play a game of wall ball, with Courage slowly exhausting himself, while Katz just kind of doesn't take it very seriously at all. He's completely fine, and even pulls out a couple of props himself. He even stops to make some tea at one point, and is just playing around with Courage for sport until Courage wears himself out. Meanwhile, during the sequence, Muriel has since decided to stop relying on Courage to save her, and actually deals with the spider herself. She actually kicks it into the toilet, flushes the toilet while it's in there, and then it gets stuck, and then it goes down the toilet. Then she dresses herself back up and proceeds to complain about the service and the management, and proceeds to go find Katz to actually complain to him. At which point Katz has actually defeated Courage and actually smacks the wall ball with a racket, which is very illegal in an actual game of wall ball, but it's cartoon physics, so why do we care? And Courage is knocked in the head with it and falls down. At which point Katz grabs him by the throat and states that now that Courage is finished, he's going to learn firsthand why nobody ever actually checks out of Katz Motel, and then pulls out one of his spiders and is about to feed Courage to it. But then Muriel shows up at the last minute, whacks Katz over the head with his own racket, and then they leave with Muriel once again reiterating her previous point that the service stinks. At which point they recollect Eustace and they all get in the car, and Muriel notes the wrapped up cocoon that Eustace is quote unquote wearing, and points out that maybe they should get one for Courage and herself. And Courage, realizing the implication, kind of panics and just screams to himself. So yeah, this is the first episode, half of the episode. There's obviously a second half, but this episode firmly sets up that Katz is actually the main antagonist, since again he's the one who shows up the most in the entire series, and it shows that he's one of the most sadistic villains in the entire series. So he shows up as a recurring villain, and this episode is just to set up what kind of person he is and what kind of threat he's going to be in later seasons and later episodes of this. But in any case, yeah, that's my review of the night Katz Motel. On to the next part of this. Okay, so this episode is actually a lot of visual comedy, as Courage kind of faces off against a Cajun fox who's trying to make Muriel into a stew, which is hence the name of the episode. So it starts off with the Cajun fox actually preparing his signature Cajun granny stew for a cook-off. And the ingredients he lists are actually very funny. He has lizard lips, elephant ankles, a spoonful of frog eyes, but then he realizes he's actually missing the primary ingredient, which is an old lady. So he goes out to go get one. And as it turns out, at that exact moment, Muriel and Courage are actually going to feed the birds. Although Courage admits that he's only really there because Muriel took him, because as he explains, the birds always make fun of him and he doesn't really like birds all that much. So, and he's not wrong, because the birds start making funny faces at him, and he hides in Muriel's coat to get away from them. And Muriel tells him that he's going to take a nap, but that she's going to take a nap, but that he shouldn't stay in there the whole time. At which point the fox finally notices Muriel sitting on the bench, and also to a more of an extent, notices that there's actually that Courage is actually hiding in her coat, and pointing out that he needs Muriel for his Cajun granny stew. He actually pulls Courage out of her coat and throws her in the fountain, and then proceeds to scoop her up and run away with her. Courage quickly realizes that he can't allow Muriel to actually become a stew, so he wonders out loud that he hopes he's going to do something, because he sure as hell doesn't know what he's going to do. But he does eventually break into a meat shop, steals the sausage from the guy in there, and asks the Cajun Fox what he did with Muriel, but the Cajun Fox just denies that he has Muriel. So Courage beats him over the foot with the frozen sausage, and Muriel comes tumbling out of his mouth. At which point Courage scoops him up, but the Fox takes offense to the fact that Courage smashed his foot in, so he proceeds to hail a taxi and slams Courage in the face with the door, and then scoops up Muriel and hauls her off in the taxi. And Courage, realizing he's never going to be able to find them because they're in a taxi, he actually gets inside. He actually takes a balloon and a pair of binoculars and starts looking around for her from the air. And eventually, he notices that she's actually that the taxi that they were in actually has broken down. So he actually scoops Muriel up from the air, and replaces her with a bomb, which blows the Cajun Fox's face right up, and he starts to become annoyed with Courage, because the dog is because Courage is starting to annoy him a little bit, because he's trying to make his Cajun granny stew, and Courage is obviously getting in the way of that. But eventually, Courage does eventually land and set Muriel down, and tells her that the fox is long gone and that she doesn't have to worry about any of it. And obviously Muriel's still fast asleep at this point, so she doesn't hear any of it. But then the Cajun Fox shows up in a road roller and runs Courage over and scoops up Muriel, and then proceeds to keep going back to his hole. At which point Courage then proceeds to take the fact that he's already in the ground and burrows a tunnel to the road that the fox is on, and begins to think of a way he can actually stop the fox from actually scooping up Muriel and actually taking her back to his hideout. And eventually he notices there's a big pile of rocks blocking one of the roads, and that there's actually a road closed sign. So he scoops up the road closed sign, puts it in front of the road that's obviously not closed. Which doesn't work, or at least it doesn't work in the way Courage was thinking. Which is that he was hoping that the fox would actually go and divert himself and actually go into the rocks. But what happens instead was that Courage actually gets run over by the Cajun. He actually gets run over by the Cajun Fox in the steamroller, in the road roller. But in the process, it's revealed that both roads were out, and the Cajun Fox then proceeds to go into a lake. And Muriel just kind of goes flying up as they fall off. At which point Muriel actually wakes up for a brief bit, but then believes she's actually still sleeping because she believes she's having one of those floaty dreams. So she goes right back to sleep. And then Courage tries to catch her, and Muriel lands on top of him. At which point the fox shows up again and scoops her back up, and proceeds to try and take her back to his hideout again. But Courage actually decides to pull some more trickery by actually pulling out a slot machine that he rigged with a punching glove, and pretending to be a carnival barker. Courage then proceeds to encourage the Great Cajun Fox to gamble and set off the rigged gambling machine, which then proceeds to punch the fox in the face. So Courage then proceeds to scoop her up, and decides to call the police to actually let them know what's happening. And the police operator, and at first it seems like this is actually going to work, and the police officer offers to send somebody over. But then it's revealed that the Cajun Fox is actually the one that they sent, or at least it's implied that he actually intercepted the call and actually decided to disguise himself as a police officer. But then he bonks Courage over the head with his nightstick and scoops up Muriel and puts her in his biplane and states that she's going to be a beautiful stew. But and then proceeds to take off. But Courage actually catches up to them and grabs onto the landing gear on the back. And Courage loudly proclaims that he's going to save Muriel. But the fox then proceeds to start doing a bunch of loop-de-loops to try and shake him off, which doesn't work, as Courage just kind of lands in the plane instead. And the fox and Courage then proceed to start fighting one another. But while they're actually fighting, Muriel actually starts sleepwalking on the wing of the biplane. And they realize that she's going to actually go over the edge if they're not careful. So they decide to put their differences aside and actually try to save her together. And Muriel, and obviously Courage is very upset, and obviously Courage is very upset at the fox, because obviously it's the fox's fault. Obviously, if the fox hadn't tried to kidnap Muriel and make her into a stew, none of this would have happened, and she wouldn't be in danger of falling off a biplane right now. But the fox merely retorts that she would have been a delicious stew, and that if Courage hadn't interfered, he would have been able to make the stew without any problems. And obviously, Courage isn't completely in the right, because obviously making somebody into a stew is a bad thing. So, but as they're trying to keep the biplane balanced so Muriel doesn't fall off, Muriel actually walks over the edge, and they proceed to panic and look over the edge to see what happened to her. Only for it to be revealed that for whatever reason she's able to walk on the underside and is still going. And the fox merely responds that he knew she was there the whole time, which Courage just kind of dismisses kind of sarcastically. But yeah, in any case, they as they're actually arguing over whether or not the fox was actually aware of what was going on, they realize that the plane actually doesn't have a pilot, and it then proceeds to plow into the side of a cliff, and Muriel goes flying up, and the Cajun fox and Courage then proceed to start fighting, and Courage actually runs to the other end of the cliff to actually try and catch her, but realizes that there's no ground behind him, and the Cajun fox pushes him off and catches Muriel, and then proceeds to go back to his lair, and then long last is able to finally make his granny stew, or at least he tries to. He starts doing the preparations and all that, but Courage actually winds up falling through the roof of his cave, which is apparently on the bottom of the cliff where Courage fell in, and then proceeds to fall through as the fox is about to throw Muriel into the stew, and the fox goes in himself. At which point Muriel wakes up, wonders where the hell she is, but then smells the stew and concludes that Courage must have made some Cajun fox stew, and wonders if they should try some. But the Cajun fox obviously dissuades them from actually trying his Cajun fox stew, since Cajun fox, as he explains, Cajun fox stew isn't for them. And Courage merely adds to that, pointing out that he's had enough Cajun for one day. So, yeah, this episode just kind of a series of what the show does well, which is just a series of short skits and jokes, and very fast-paced comedy humor. It's a very good episode for that. So, yeah, so in any case, overall, this episode just kind of sets up the idea of Katz being the main antagonist, and also sets up what the series does well, which is that it does a series of short skits. So, it's just a really good episode because of that. This is just a good first episode to show what the series is. It introduces the main antagonist, who occasionally shows up, and it introduces the Cajun fox, who more or less just shows a battle of wits and shows what the show is known for, which is its visual comedy. So, yeah, overall, this is a very good episode and a good start to Courage Month. So, in any case, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. If you want to keep up to date with what's going on with the channel, then that's actually a great way to do that. And finally, be sure to check out my Patreon if you want to support the show. If you want to see more projects like this massive project that I'm doing all month, then be sure to go check me out and go help me down over there. Also, if you want to see more content from me, then one, you can actually check out my Twitch down in the description below as well. I absolutely recommend you doing that. I do recommend that because it does help, it is more content for you guys, and also I'm going to be continuing Courage Month over there as well. We're going to be playing some horror games in the very near future and throughout the rest of the month, October. So, and also finally we're going to end it on a watch-a-thon. So if you guys want to actually go check that out. Again, link is down in the description, and also help me fill out a requirement over there. But that's beside the point. And also, if you want to see even more content from me, then you can actually check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this one, and it may or may not be Courage related. Whereas the bottom video is the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me, and again, it may or may not be Courage related. But in any case, if you guys want to try either of those out, then link is down in the description. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.